Amber had an enormous amount of evidence.
They did not believe her. Why do you think they did not believe her?
I think that a lot of that was that it was Johnny Depp.
That was the first time that a victim of sexual abuse had to testify on live television.
And I fought hard and lost that battle. It should not have happened. She is heartbroken, and one of the first things that she said when she came back from the verdict, when we went into the conference room, was, "I am so sorry to all these women."
She said that?
Yes, she felt like she had let down all of these women because she had more evidence than most people do, and yet they still didn't believe her.
What message do you think this sends?
It's a horrible message. It's, as I said, a setback. It's a significant setback because that's exactly what it means. Unless you pull out your phone and you video your spouse or your significant other beating you, effectively, you won't be believed.
For a while now, one of the most talked about topics in Hollywood history has been the defamation trial between actor Johnny Depp and actress Amber Heard. After her 4-year-long relationship with Depp had ended, Heard wrote an opinion piece in the Washington Post in 2018 titled, "I spoke up against sexual violence and faced the culture's wrath. That has to change." In this piece, she begins with an observation of hers, which also happens to be a sociological fact. Men have the power, physically, socially, and financially, and institutions seem to support this arrangement. She goes on to mention sexual abuse in her youth and how she knew that the system would not allow her justice, something abuse victims are rarely awarded. Then, without explicitly mentioning Depp by name, she seems to refer to the alleged domestic and sexual violence that she experienced in her marriage to him. But rather than describing the details of the abuse itself, she focuses on its social-political aftermath. Not just for her as an individual, but for women in general. She speaks about the political state of the world in regards to women's rights and women's safety, and how structures and institutions protect male abusers and demonize female victims. While I'm sure many people would like to debate this, I would argue that this is exactly what is happening right now. And the public's response to the trial is proof. Women are hardly ever believed, and they never get justice. $3.5 million viewers tuned in to watch Johnny Depp and his lawyers speak out on the supposedly false abuse allegations made by Amber Heard, which had apparently destroyed his career and personal life. I was one of those viewers. I followed the trial religiously, watching every single second of the proceedings, which lasted 9 hours a day for 7 weeks. And I will be honest, I went into the trial completely on Johnny's side. I came in fully prepared to laugh at Amber's lies and chastise her like the rest of the world was. Johnny was my first celebrity crush, and I had been obsessed with him for years. This, coupled with the masses doing their best to make Amber into a monster, led to my devout support of Johnny. He had my full support for about the first 3 weeks of the trial. But as I continued to watch and pay close attention to every single detail, I began to question my stance. I was hesitant to admit it at first, because admitting it would mean losing the comfort of watching all my favorite Johnny Depp movies. But eventually, I had to come out with it. I was no longer convinced that Johnny was innocent. And I, just like the rest of the world, had been supporting an abuser, and in the process, contributing to an insanely toxic culture that makes women's lives a living hell. I decided then and there that I did not fully believe either of them. Depp's excessive drug use to the point where he couldn't remember anything he said or did, and his drinking to the point where he would slam cupboards and smash glasses in a fit of rage, reminded me that any rage-filled man, especially one addicted to dangerous drugs, is capable of the worst kinds of abuse. But Heard's exaggerated expressions, oversaturated photo evidence, and tone of voice in many of the recordings prevented me from giving her my full support. It is at this point that I would like to give a quick disclaimer. I was not a part of Johnny Depp and Amber Heard's marriage. I never witnessed them in person. I've never seen them interact with each other in real life. All I know is what everyone else knows, which is what we have been shown by the press and on the internet. I am not on anyone's side. I am not defending Amber. The only reason it may seem as if I'm defending Amber is because my opinion is overwhelmingly in favor of leveling the playing field. I'm not trying to say that Amber is for sure innocent. All I'm trying to do is counter the global sentiment that is demonizing Amber and making her seem like she was the only abusive one, and that she is lying about the abuse that she received from Johnny Depp. To help you better understand what I'm trying to say, here is a clip from a lawyer on YouTube that I am subscribed to, named Leah Miller.
I am not taking any sides. Men can and are absolutely victims of relationship abuse, and based on the little bit of testimony I've been exposed to in this court case, it sounds like Heard did allegedly do some pretty malicious shit during the course of their relationship. I'm not denying that, but I am feeling some kind of way about the way that Heard is being inhumanely attacked every day on a global scale. Nothing about relationship abuse is black and white, and as outsiders, we have no idea and will never know the extent of someone else's relationship trauma, which is why I think it's so upsetting to me to see people taking pretty universally Johnny Depp's side in this case. And I am not taking sides here, I'm just trying to even out the bias I'm seeing all around me by pointing out the very real fact that we don't know who had the upper hand in terms of the power dynamics of the relationship, but it's not like Heard came in with an advantage.
I would highly recommend watching her video titled In Defense of Amber Heard if you are interested in challenging the popular narrative surrounding the trial. In this video, she brings up a really important point, one that, as a sociology student, rings in my mind whenever somebody tries to discredit Amber. She says that there is no such thing as a perfect victim. People would only believe Amber and other women if she was purely innocent. But unfortunately, that is rarely the case. Amber admits to having fought back on several occasions, responding to his violence with more violence, screaming and hurling insults at him. But this in and of itself does not take away her status of victimhood. In fact, the realisticness of her interactions with him make me even more inclined to believe her. Abuse is not a clean, simple, black and white phenomenon. There is grey area in which victims retaliate in questionable ways. But if they are the inferior one in the power dynamic, they can't possibly be the abuser. They are the victim. A brilliant example of this is seen in the book or the TV show Big Little Lies, where Celeste's husband violently abuses her, and she sometimes hits back in retaliation. She thinks that this makes her as sick as he is, and that she is also the abuser. But at the end of the day, she is still the victim. But now I would like to shift the focus from Amber and Johnny to an even bigger problem. What does the verdict and the masses' opinions mean for feminism, specifically for the Me Too movement? After Amber had been found by the US court to have defamed Johnny and lied about the abuse, my heart sank, and my first thought was, this is it. Feminism is dead. Every single person online, including many women, were overjoyed at the verdict, and my heart broke to see so many so-called feminists celebrate a win for the patriarchy. While there are lots of people who frankly just don't care that Johnny Depp is an abuser, I think that most of his supporters truly do believe that he is innocent. But as a South African woman living in the gender-based violence capital of the world, it still stings to see women taking Johnny's side, regardless of their intentions. As Heard's lawyer said, this verdict essentially means that no woman can ever come forward with her story of abuse unless she has unquestionable, explicit evidence of it, something which most victims just don't have. What bothers me, though, is the fact that there was evidence. Maybe no explicit videos of him beating her, but there were multiple texts that proved just how abusive Johnny was. There were texts between him and his friends where Johnny spoke of causing Amber's death and doing unspeakable things to her corpse. There were texts between him and Amber where he apologizes to her for letting his monster out. There were medical records of broken bones that were not allowed into the US trial, that had been allowed into the UK trial, in which Johnny lost. Not even this overwhelming evidence was enough to convince the jury, or the rest of the world, that Amber was telling the truth about being a victim of abuse. Something also extremely concerning to me is the online reaction to Amber and her testimony, in which she depicts both sexual and domestic abuse. The online reaction to her has not only been to accuse her of lying and vilifying and demonizing her, but also making fun of her in cruel videos.
You hit me in the face.
I walked out of the bedroom and he slapped me across the face.
What it looked like, his mental health is just falling apart. It's what it looked like.
Objection calls for speculation.
I'll sustain.
I was just sitting there on this carpet, looking at the dirty carpet.
Ms. Heard, you also claim that Johnny took out about 2 yards of your intestines, blew them up, and turned it into a balloon animal. Is that correct?
It did. Yes.
Now, even if you don't believe that Amber Heard is the victim in this case, it's still not okay to be making fun of a trial in which heavy topics like this are being spoken of. It's never okay to make fun of a court case where testimony about sexual violence is being given. And I truly think that people who are making this into humor need some help. Something else that I feel needs to be pointed out is the unequal reaction to Amber. Even if she was the abuser, which is highly questionable, but even if she was, even if there was solid evidence to prove that she was 100% the abuser and the only one in that relationship who was guilty of violence, the reaction that people have had to Amber is nothing compared to the reaction people have had to male abusers in the industry. Most male abusers still have their careers today. Most male abusers were chastised and demonized for a few weeks after their abuse incidents, but are now still thriving. People seem to forget that Chris Brown was abusive towards Rihanna. People don't really seem to care that R. Kelly has just been busted for sex trafficking. Not even South Africans talk about the fact that our former president was in a trial for allegations of sexual assault. Nobody talks about these men as much as they talk about Amber Heard. Nobody makes men seem like monsters as much as they make Amber Heard seem like a monster. And you can say whatever you want about it, but that is misogyny, even when it comes from women. To end this video essay off, I would just like to say that I'm by no means trying to imply that men cannot be victims of abuse. I'm also not trying to say that we shouldn't be talking about abuse towards men. nor am I saying that male victims shouldn't come forward. But if you only bring up abuse towards men in response to me bringing up abuse towards women, that means that you don't actually care about abuse towards men, and you're just looking for something to argue with. In conclusion, I would like to remind you once again that there is no perfect victim, and there is no excuse to mock victims. I would also like to remind you that I am not taking any sides. I do not know what happened. I can only rely on the evidence that we've been presented with. And if anyone would like to have a conversation about this because they disagree with what I'm saying, please don't attack me in the comments. I'm more than happy to engage in a proper intellectual conversation, but I'm not going to respond to hate. Thank you so much for watching my video. I will be posting a lot more video essays, hopefully. I plan to talk about humanities subjects and social justice issues that I'm passionate about. And if you don't already know, I am a humanities student studying philosophy, history, and literature. So if that convinces you that I have any kind of legitimacy to be talking about these topics, then great. Thank you so much for your support.